Hello, and welcome to this next talk. I want to thank the organizers for arranging for this presentation. And this is sponsored by MedITEX, medical IT experts. And the topic here is what is good software for laboratory quality assurance and data management for the modern era. So I want to point out it's about quality assurance. So I do have some disclosures. I'm a shareholder. I'm also, importantly here, a MedITEX customer and active user, which is why they're having me present on this. So it is obviously somewhat of a bias. But the objectives I have are really to tie into this topic of this meeting, the future innovations. You know, what's coming down the pike. And I'm going to present what we can currently do, but also tied into what we're hoping is going to come with development of more technology. So we'll talk a bit about QC and QA. Quality control, there's quite a bit there, but since this is mostly about medical software for patient records, there's not so much about quality control that I'll cover. Mostly about routine KPI tracking, the different platforms you can get for EMRs, and then the quality assurance of clinical and staff performance. Just to touch on the quality control, everyone should know this gentleman, Giles Palmer, who published the article using Reflections, an app, which allows you to do, basically ditch your clipboard and do electronic quality control, which is one level of, innovations for QC. But there's even further innovations, such as here, which is showing you these different companies that do 24/7 continuous monitoring, such as Ziltrix and the others shown, which obviously give you much more data than just a single time point that's done manually. So this is all going to feed into an automated system that allows us to track all of these things. In addition to the quality control of the equipment, we have the quality control of how we work. Not so much about the outcomes, but actually about when we do our work. And this is just one paper using an electronic witnessing system and showing you the granular detail you can get that then is allowed us to then take that and put it into, say, a bigger data system to track metrics and improve outcomes. Finally, of all these different quality control parts, there's also the importance of batch tracking. And we now know that there's the ability with QR codes and with just the barcodes in general for our products that they include the lot number in that barcode. And that means we can track these. And the more we automate this and have it into a innovative software, the better we're able to track what happens when with our culture systems, so that we know if we have a stretch that something isn't working well, we can actually tie it to a product. So that's the sum of a lot of the quality control innovation that's coming about, and clearly that's interesting and deserves more detail, but this talk is going to focus on using a health record to track performance, looking at KPIs, and basing this on work that the Mortimers have done and published in their book, in their second edition there, in a paper that we published here in New Zealand a few years ago. So we have these embryologist key performance indicators, and I list some here. Fertilization rate, these are all things that we know are important to track. We look at survival rate based on who did the vitrification, who did the thaw. These are things that we can get out of the electronic medical record easily and then tie it to different types of outcomes. So that's important. I'd like to add one more measure that we don't include in these general ones, and that's really decisions that we make. And here's an example from an app called Art Compass, and I do disclose that I'm on the advisory board for that company, which is which day of culture, what would you do on that last day? Would you freeze or discard this embryo? And it's a really important quality assurance for decision-making for embryologists that we need to incorporate as well, and that we're doing on a monthly basis, both in New Zealand and in Malaysia. So I'd like to just then dive into the tracking of some of these KPIs a little bit more to illustrate to you what how that electronic medical record really allows us to evaluate the system well. So hopefully most of you have seen this. This is again from the paper by Elizabeth Hammond and myself, where we looked and saw that during a 6-month period or a 5-month period here called period 2, we saw that the day 5 usable blastocyst rate shifted. And we were able to really analyze this easily because it's all within the electronic medical record and exportable. And then we're, control chart tracking this and able to indicate when there's a shift in performance of a laboratory metric that preceded by a few months when we were able to detect the shift due to pregnancy rate. So this is the power of bigger data and granular data looking at our cultures and the embryo growth. So to do this, and this is the crux of kind of the talk today, is really what are the platforms? How do we get a lot of data and get to the point where we can really start to extract meaningful information? So it's all based on having an electronic medical record or an electronic health record, something that many clinics don't have because you can get by without this. Having come from Mayo Clinic, we had our own homemade electronic medical record there, and then eventually purchased a large one that's used in many of the clinics in the US. And then here in New Zealand in about 2016, we went ahead and purchased MedITEX. And MedITEX allows us to do different things. And you can see these different steps here. And actually, I'm going to take a step back. So here's MedITEX, and it can do built-in analysis. It can also export data that you can then put into a spreadsheet. And then you can take that and then analyze it with your stats program. And so the way I do this is I use the MedITEX KPIs to a degree, and I'll show you how the built-in component of the medical record actually has things that really cover a lot of what we need. But there are times where we need to export certain functions, and thus there's a query builder to be able to do that. Anything we export, we put into a spreadsheet. In the case that I use Microsoft Excel, and then I take that to a stats program, and I use the SaaS program called Jump. Now, obviously, I would expect many of you use different stats programs, and some of you may even use Microsoft Excel because it has a statistics module add-in that works very well. I just find that I like to use a separate one. It keeps my data cleaner. It's what I'm used to. The big thing about this, really, we should be asking, and especially in this conference when we're talking about future innovations, is when can this all be automated? That actually the data is put in. Some of the data hopefully is put in automatically from, say, time-lapse incubators that automatically put the information into the EMR. And then all of this data that we normally export could be generated, and we could see a dashboard and just have all that data analyzed in a way with machine learning to give us really good metrics on how things are going. And that's where we're headed. We're not there yet. So I'm going to, again, just share some of the ways that we approach this in a manual method. So MedITEX is an electronic medical record. As I said, it's a digital version of the paper file. Hopefully many of you are now using EMRs. And we've been using it, as I said, since 2016, and we use it in all our locations. We also use it in Malaysia, in our main clinic in Bangsar South, in all the laboratories, also in the other 3 sites that we've got currently active with IVF labs. So what MedITEX has in it is this thing that's called the KPI Builder. And so it's already been one where you can see all these different lab KPIs, PG KPIs, so pregnancy KPIs, clinic KPIs, cryo. There's quite a few that they've developed, even in extra KPIs. And these are all useful, although they may not fit exactly the definition you like, but they're very quick to run. And in this case, you can see I used a stimulation start ICSI cycles for the month of April. I looked at different age groups and fertilization rate for ICSI, and you can see, young patients under 38, and it goes down with the different age groups, which was actually quite illuminating because I hadn't used this much, and I didn't realize how different the different age groups were until I ran that. Now you see that we're able to see the chart here. We're also able to see the table. So if I go to the next slide, I go to the table view. In the table view, we still have 76%, 71%, 57% for the three different age groups here. But what's really useful is, especially if you're looking at a set period of time and you want to drill into that more, the power of having this KPI machine in the software is I'm not going to do it here because it's just a screenshot, but I could click on this exact case, this cycle, and it would take me to that patient. So if I saw that I had a result that didn't look right, or that I wanted more information on, it just gives you an immediate connection to patient cycles. So I've found that really quite useful. But it's not always going to give me the data that I need. So in those cases, then I have to run my own query. And there's a very powerful query report editor where we can build the query. And here, just like that last one, it's ICSI fertilization is what I call it. And you can see I've got things like who performs it. I can do the semen analysis information, so I can include that into it. We were looking for a while at whether there were soft oocytes or what we might call those eggs that are brittle, that it's kind of the opposite, two things for the same, but when the membrane breaks on impact. So we were tracking that for a while. So you can see that there's quite a bit you can do there. And when we run that, we get this report here. Again, this is just demo data, and it gives all these different, so it's number of collected oocytes, number cryopreserved, number fertilized, number inseminated, number 2PNs, and so on. And then I just export that as an Excel table. And from there, I can import it then into an Excel spreadsheet. And within an Excel spreadsheet, you can see here that we have the OPU data table or retrieval data table, the frozen embryo transfer data table. So I've got two tables that I've exported. And then I run all these pivots, which allow me to get day 5 blast utilization rate on a control chart, seeing every month. And I can track that nicely, which is really quite useful. And just to blow that up a little bit further, again, how it's per month. We're large enough clinics that we've got robust data that will fit a line well on a monthly basis. And so it's really quite useful, but you do see that there's a fair amount of work, manual work, to get to this point. And it would really, in the future, we expect that this will be automated and we'll have the ability to do more. So that was for clinic tracking, like tracking how is each laboratory doing overall. But we also like to be able to share this information to our embryologists on an individual basis. And so then we have what we call our staff KPIs spreadsheet pivots. And again, we've got some spreadsheets here, the insemination spreadsheet, the embryo transfer spreadsheet or embryo replacements, the thaw freeze spreadsheet. And in this case, I'm just showing you one example that every embryologist can then see their ICSI fertilization rate, their IVF fertilization rate, and their total blast utilization rate for ICSI. And then I also track 3PN rate. So these are all, I mean, we've got many of these, but again, it's just having the data automatically entered on every patient is really quite useful, and relatively easy to get out and turn into this type of good month-to-month granular data, which we find is useful for tracking performance and needing to institute any kind of correction. The last thing I'll talk about in regards to the whole process is around statistical analysis. So again, I use the software called JUMP or JMP. This is just fitting a model where I have my day 5 use. So, it's quite a sophisticated query to get out the number of embryos that were either frozen or transferred on day 5 out of the total number of 2PNs. I did this then by year, and I used my different variables here, which is the age of the patient, which clinic was located, the number of 2PNs for each patient, which we know is important for day 5 usable rate. And then I wanted to see if it changed much per quarter within a year. And so I can run this query then, and I apologize, this is a bit blurry, but this is the result for last year, 2020. And then you can see that the age at reference, so the age of the patient, of course, is important for the number of blasts or the percentage of blasts that are made. And looking down here, it's just interesting that this is 2020, a year that many of us don't really want to have to reflect too much on. But you see that the day 5 usable blast rate was 39%, 45%, 42%, 39%. And this was statistically significant quarterly difference. I just bring it up because that second quarter, we didn't do really any cases in April because we were in lockdown. And then May, we just started up again. So it's a low number. So it's not something I can say is anything all that significant, except we weren't as busy, obviously. So perhaps there was some difference there. So just an example of our ability to do the statistics on this. So in summary, an EMR facilitates powerful analysis of KPIs to quickly identify shifts in clinical performance, and it's a multifaceted approach to data analysis that may be the best solution, and that this can be both for clinic-wide and embryologist-specific KPIs. In conclusion, a robust, comprehensive EMR is an essential tool for capturing useful data that can then be analyzed via different software packages. And I'll just end on the future. And this paper is just in press from Carol Kirchow, talking about deep learning as an early warning system, something that's dear to my heart, for saying, taking all the data that we were just talking about, putting it into a system that can actually track how performance is going in a real-time manner. That's going to be really powerful. And that's where we're going to really start to see benefits of this and innovation. So acknowledgement to Lily Hammond, John Peak, Lucas Fernandez, who's at MedITEX, of course, patients and staff, and thank you.